I don't have time for it. I'm just like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, turn it off if it bothers
Right.
you. Art is subjective. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, leave. If you don't want to
Sure.
pay for it, don't pay for it. If you don't like the halftime show, go get a beer.
Right.
Like, if you can't crip walk, sorry, like, not my problem. Like,
Right.
it's just very, like, it's just too much. It's
Yeah.
too much. I mean, and also something that I want to touch base on while we're on the NFL and halftime and such. Wait, so they don't get paid?
Right. No.
That's freaking insane.
Yeah. What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap, of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. And helping me do so, she'll be hopping on in just a little bit. My guest is a singer, a songwriter, and an actress, also host of the Modernita podcast, which also happens to be on the same podcast network as me, iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. Darilyn Castillo, she'll be hopping on in just a little bit. But before that, man, let's get to some of the BS from this last week. So I felt that it was necessary on today's show to address a long-standing epidemic that has been plaguing our country for far too long. And listen, it's scary and destructive, but as we have seen, it won't go away if we continue to ignore it. Now, what is this epidemic that I'm talking about that seems to only be growing in our country? Well, it's, of course, none other than white privilege. Yes, that's right. Now, listen, I know, like, the words alone, they're sending shivers down my spine, you know, as I can't help but think about mediocre people thinking they deserve the world simply because they were born of a certain race. It really is just, like, scary, scary stuff, right? Like, take, for example, our buddy Tucker Carlson over at Fox News, right? And his recent comments about Queen Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? Like, Tucker didn't even bother trying to hide the infectious disease of white privilege as he so proudly told the world that AOC is not a woman of color. Take a look at this.
There is no place on earth outside of American colleges and newsrooms where Sandy Cortez would be recognized as a, quote, woman of color, because she's not. She's a rich, entitled white lady. She's the pampered, obnoxious ski bunny in the matching snowsuit who tells you to pull up your mask while you're standing in the lift line at Jackson Hole. They're all the same. Doesn't matter what shade they are.
What a world we live in, that a white man not only feels comfortable, but also empowered enough to tell someone of their experience in this life. Like, now listen, I know this doesn't deserve any real validation, but I'll play along. You know, let's clear this up a little bit for anybody following along at home, right? Let's first and foremost, we'll take a look at, you know, where AOC comes from, right? Her parents. Who are her parents? Who are these white people that she is claiming to be of color, right? Well, Puerto Rican father. Surprise, surprise. Okay. Born in the Bronx. So, okay, you know, maybe he's not the real deal, as some people would say. And then a Puerto Rican mother, born on the island of Puerto Rico. Okay. Gets a little bit tougher to make the case that she's a white woman. Okay. But, you know, Puerto Ricans, like, you know, many of them are just kind of like white Europeans, right? Well, let's talk about the history of the island a little bit. It's an island where the people have an ancestry that can trace its roots back to Africa, as well as the indigenous people of the Taino tribes. So, yeah, I'd kind of say if you're from the island of Puerto Rico, or you have heritage, you have ancestors from the island of Puerto Rico, you probably would fall under that category of a person of color just based upon your roots, right? Like, it never ceases to amaze me how many white people feel like, you know, they can tell you your entire life story based upon their own ignorant scope of the world, right? Like, white people, let me help you out a little bit here, because it's time you learn that just because you personally feel comfortable telling people what their racial experience in this country has been, the reality is you don't know the lived experience that someone like AOC has had, that undoubtedly time and time again, she's at one point or another been reminded that she is not white and will never be fully accepted into that little club, right? And like the irony in all of this is that I don't even have to do like a deep dive into her past to find moments that prove this, right? Like I literally just have to go back a few years to 2019 when your god, Donald Trump, told a group of congresswomen that, of course, included AOC, told them to, quote, go back to where you came from. I'm pretty sure that little quip is something that bigots like you and our former president save for people of color. Oh, and as for calling her out as a quote-unquote rich, entitled white lady, Tucker, you and your stupid haircut have an estimated net worth of $30 million. And now, while I can't find a current net worth for AOC, some say $100,000, some say $1 million. Who knows? But to be honest, it's completely irrelevant because what Tucker is saying here, he's saying that if you are rich, you're not allowed to take a stand and advocate for those who aren't as lucky as you. So for those of you who stan Tucker Carlson, right, who watch him and his nonsense on a nightly basis, if you are not worth $30 million, it's probably time that you open your eyes to what this lunatic is actually saying. He has no problem telling you, basically to your face, that I am too rich and privileged to actually think it's worth my time to give a damn about you. Basically, what he's saying is all he cares about is riling people up enough to keep them tuning in on a nightly basis so Fox News keeps cutting him them big checks. And Tucker, he is creepily laughing all the way to the bank. Oof. That's scary, scary stuff. Now, with that said, let's lighten things up a little bit with my guest this week. She is a singer, a songwriter, and an actress, and also my fellow podcast family. She just launched the Modernita podcast on iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. Darilyn Castillo, how you feeling? I like the little New York greeting that I'm getting. I'm feeling it.
You know, we're home. We got to do it.
Yes, exactly. I love it. Listen, I'm really excited about your podcast. I mean, I think it's incredible. Like I said, you are my podcast family. You are on the My Cultura podcast with iHeart. So first and foremost, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Of course. So I want to get into the podcast. But first, if it's cool with you, I want to kind of tackle a few current events that have been going down recently and kind of get your take on them.
Okay, what you got for me?
Okay. So, I mean, let's start with the singer Farruko, right? There has been a development in his career. He has apparently retired, he's saying, from making music. And he's saying now that he'll be preaching at his concerts. He's fulfilling his commitments to God. And man, so a lot of people are shocked. A lot of people were disappointed. There were refunds being asked for from fans at his recent concert where this all took place. And it's interesting because it's like the biggest moment of his career, right? Because Pepas is just a song that blew up and is getting played at like every, club in the world and every sporting event.
I mean, it's a dope ass song. Can I say ass?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Do your thing.
No, it's a dope ass song. Yeah.
Exactly. But he also in the song encourages the use of drugs, and he says, quote, that he didn't feel proud of the song lyrics and said, God only knows how much danger I caused to his children. And then he also claimed that he cried every night after the song was released because he felt empathy. So, I mean, man, let's just kind of unpack this a little bit. Your feelings when you kind of hear something like this. I mean, you yourself are an artist. I mean, what's kind of your initial thoughts?
I'm just going to put it out there because most people don't even realize, but like the music industry is insane.
Yeah,
and it's insanely...
It's an understatement?
Yeah, I mean, the entertainment industry is insanely toxic. So
Yes.
like, you know, I'm not going to speak on his personal experience. I don't know him personally. I don't know
Sure.
what he's been through.
Right.
But it sounds like to me that there's some things that he's been through that he does not really approve of. And
Right.
sometimes in this industry, we feel forced as artists to say yes, because if we're giving an opportunity, right, we have to be grateful. We have to be
Sure.
like at the feet of everybody who's giving us this opportunity. So I
Right,
think,
right.
I don't know, I think there's some power in how he's changing his own narrative. And like everybody could judge or be in whatever place they want to be, but that's his journey. And like, I respect that. I think it takes a lot of balls and a lot of guts to be like, actually, this isn't for me.
Right.
And to walk away from it. And I mean, it sounds like he's taking responsibility for his actions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, I respect that decision. I'm like, live your life in the way that you want to live it. I'm not going to judge you for that. And listen, we've all in this entertainment industry I've been through some. So I don't blame him.
Right.
Sometimes I go to church on Sundays and I'm like, damn, did I really just say that last week? My bad.
But it's true. I think it's interesting, first and foremost, because you have to respect somebody at his level to do that, right? Because I think it's easy if you maybe don't find success to kind of just be like, the hell with it, you know? I'm done with this industry. But to be at that level, to basically be, you know, at the point that you've been working so hard for your, because Farruko's been around for a minute, you know what I mean? And he's finally getting that like commercial recognition of becoming, you know, one of the elite guys in the Latin genre of music, you know, to walk away at that point, you kind of do have to respect that. I mean, and like you said, like I've been in the entertainment industry for a minute. I've gone through a lot of these same types of feelings. And even I've arrived at a point in my career where I'm just kind of like, man, like my own personal happiness and feeling good about the work that I do is far more important than me checking off some asinine goal that I wrote down like in a notebook, or far more important than me like impressing some person out there because they think what I'm doing is cool. You know what I'm saying? Like I've had a lot of those kind of moments in my career as well. And I think it happens with age. You start to kind of, you know, rethink what's important to you, you know, and oftentimes I think a lot of people do that. They just don't have the guts to actually jump and do what actually makes them happy because they're too worried about like no longer being able to be that dude, you know, who's like famous anymore or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we could crack a bottle of wine open and have a long conversation about this one day. Right. But yeah, it's tough, and people don't. And something that's I remember I had this mentor tell me, the people who I'm not gonna say this properly. I'm just gonna say whatever the gist of it. But the people who always have something to say are the people that don't do what you do.
Sure.
And who don't have that. And especially in the entertainment industry, it takes a certain kind of person to do what we do. It takes a certain kind of person, as you said, to say no, to back away from that and have like a happy career, right? A happy life.
Right.
Because listen, I got a lot of friends who make a lot of money and they are very unhappy.
True. Absolutely same.
So it's just, sometimes you got to just follow your own path and like do your own thing.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like, you know, our kind of generation might be like the first on the verge of thinking like this, you know what I mean? Because I think previously it was all about excess. You know what I mean? I know for me, you grew up just thinking about like, you look at like MTV Cribs and all these things that were very much so, you know, like the staples of our upbringing, you know, and it was all about excess. It was all about showing off all that you had, who had the coolest cars, who had the fanciest, you know, house and all these different kinds of things. But arguably many of those people, you know, when history shows you that they weren't very happy or they had very destructive patterns or went through a lot of tumultuous things throughout the course of their life while living in the limelight. You know what I mean? And I just think it's funny that I think that we are kind of the generation that's kind of like, well, that stuff's not really all that cool. That gaudiness isn't really all that cool. You know what I mean?
And I also think like, I mean, our generation is like conditioned, right? Like, I mean, think about our parents before and like the Aunt Theo and everybody else. It's like, we're conditioned to like suffer, right? Yeah. We're conditioned to be like, that's just how it is. Like it is how it is. Like even like my mom and my stepfather and my dad, like if that, like when I make a decision about my happiness, like they're like, okay. So it's like this thing that like, you know, our parents have been conditioned, our grandparents, our great grandparents to struggle. And And yeah, there's some struggling walking uphill, but sometimes if you want to take a break and sit down, like take a break and sit down, because it's not going to serve you to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing up the hill.
Right. Especially, I think, as Latin families, I mean, families, we're children of immigrants, you know what I mean? And like they were in survival mode. They couldn't pass up a check. And I talk about this all the time. It's like, they broke their back to give us a level of privilege that they did not have. And to me, to continue on that same tradition of like working yourself to the bone doesn't really make sense, because you're never actually like fulfilling what your goal was for a better life, essentially, right? You just keep repeating the same toxic patterns over and over again of people who are more concerned with status and keeping up with the Joneses rather than finding their own happiness,
Yeah, we don't got time for that.
Right, exactly. I want to move on to another story that's kind of been going on for the last couple of weeks, and that is the NFL, and they've been, being sued right now by Brian Flores, who is a football coach, and he's actually of Honduran descent, but obviously, is a black man as well. And he's filing this lawsuit based upon unfair hiring practices, of the NFL, and basically saying that, they have this rule in place, the Rooney Rule, which basically says you have to interview X amount of, people of color for each open position. But what he's saying is that these teams were already committing and to hiring white coaches, and they would just bring him in essentially after the fact, just to basically, get around that rule. And it's it's ironic. You have a league that the majority is made up of black men, but only one of the coaches in that league is actually black. So it's very obvious that, from an ownership standpoint, there is an incredible amount of bias and blatant racism when it comes to empowering black men. They don't see them as leaders, essentially, right? With this kind of lawsuit. And I think what's also impressive when you look at Brian Flores, like he's essentially putting his entire career on the line for the greater good of like the future of black men, wanting to be coaches, in this league. I mean, let's kind of unpack that a bit, kind of what your emotional reaction is when you hear stories like this one.
Listen, I love sports, I mean, obviously I'm Dominican and like baseball is everything, and you're wearing the Yankee hat, you know what I'm saying? So, of course. And, grew up on basketball and love football and all of that. This is not something new. I mean, this is something that we've seen in every aspect, in every kind of business, in every kind of field. So, and unfortunately, there always has to be a sacrificial lamb. I hate that. And I hate to say that, but somebody has to lead and somebody has to start. And usually that person who does, it's a harder time for everybody else, for them than for everybody else coming after.
Sure.
I mean, it's brave and it's commendable. And I mean, he's not wrong.
Right.
So, I guess he's feeling propelled and inspired to do so. And I think that that's incredibly brave and something that needs to be acknowledged and we need to see more of. So hopefully this will propel, some more change in the movement. The NFL has their issues. That's all I'll say.
I mean, well, that's a fact. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a shame that somebody always has to be that sacrificial lamb, like you said, but it is necessary, right? Somebody has to be the first one to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. I'm not going to take this, And I think the only thing you would hope is that somebody from the community will do something for this man, right? Or collectively, the community will do something for this man to make sure that his sacrifice wasn't in vain, that they will have some sort of job waiting for him. Somebody will be able to grant him some sort of opportunity to at least participate in the thing that he loves the most, especially considering that he's, doing this on behalf of black people and future generations to come. This will set a precedent, not only in just the NFL, but everywhere potentially. Yeah.
And I do hope that even, let's say, let's see how everything plays out and such, but our people need to come together and support each other. So when we see one of our brothers and sisters, in a situation such as this, I mean, we should be there to pick that person up and, and figure some stuff out in our department.
No, 110%. And this leads to the next thing I want to talk about, because it becomes complicated. You had the halftime show, right? For the big game. And then it's like, okay, NFL is kind of problematic, but at the same time, you can't help but be interested in checking out when they have a lineup like Dr. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and then a surprise performance by 50 Cent, right? But and then Kendrick as well. I don't want to leave out Kendrick.
Yeah, you can't leave out Kendrick.
Are you chuckling at 50 Cent, first of all, because of the memes that have come like
no,
automatically?
Well, I am. Here's the thing. I was working during the Super Bowl.
Okay.
So, I mean, and I'm a musician. So, you know,
right.
and football's like not my favorite sport, but I'll sit and watch it. You know, my boyfriend makes me watch it. But yeah, I went back and saw like the halftime, you know, obviously YouTubed and all of that. And the memes are funny.
Right. For 50. He should have known better. I my only guess is that they sprung this on him last minute that he was going to join, but he should have known better. But anyway,
it's okay. You know, we're gonna leave 50 because he might come back and you know he likes the Twitter fingers over there.
Yeah, 50 is petty, so I'm not even going to dive into that. But it's funny to me. You start seeing some of the reactions, you know, from people, and they like can't seem to hide their racism. You know what I mean? Like you have this halftime show, like. Let's take the NFL aspect out of it completely, right? All the problematic aspects of the NFL. And let's just look at this arguably as like some of the greatest artists that have you know, graced Earth coming together. And it's cool. They all kind of have this connection to one another, you know, musically with Dr. Dre as a producer and things like that. And it's just like this really great time capsule of a really great era of music, you know? But then you have the other side, you know, there's this conservative commentator, Charlie Kirk, and his Twitter, he went to Twitter and said that, quote, the NFL is now the league of sexual anarchy. The halftime show should not be allowed on television. And and then AOC, you know, had her little right back and just called him a weirdo, essentially. So she's out there, you know, doing the work. But it's just so funny to me that, man, we still live in an era where they're going to find some reason to hate it just because it was Black people being celebrated in that moment. You know what I mean? And obviously, like, you have a podcast that you know, talks about Black people and Black culture in the Latin world, you know, and obviously there's a very problematic history that comes along with that, sadly. But I mean, when you're still seeing people like this, you know, conveying these type of messages, which is very obvious to just kind of, you know, find a politically correct way to hide their racism, you know. I mean, how does that kind of make you feel, recognizing we're still here in 2022? I
don't have time for it. I'm just like, I mean, I'm like, turn it off if it bothers you. Art is subjective. If you don't like it, leave. If you don't want to pay for it, don't pay for it. If you don't like the halftime show, go get a beer.
Right.
Like, if you can't crip walk, sorry, like, not my problem. Like, it's just very, like, it's just too much. It's too much. I mean, and also something that I want to touch base on while we're on the NFL and halftime and such. Wait, so they don't get paid?
Right. No.
That's freaking insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that bothers me more than anything. Like, that to me is like showing, okay, so let me talk about something real quick. Okay.
Well, let's break this down. Go ahead.
You know, I lived in London. I worked out there, and, you know, theater is government. It's funded by the government. It's funded by. I met a plumber who could recite Shakespeare to me. He could recite Macbeth, and they and everyone from every like corner and aspect of wherever you come from financially, people go to the theater. People go see. People go support.
Sure. It
says so much about the number one American sport not supporting the artists financially. Not that like they need it. Listen, I get it. I know it's like married. I know they don't like need it, but like
right.
It's out of respect. It's out of and that's the one thing that literally blows my mind. The number one sport in America that makes the most money, right? Off of people of color, mostly people of color. And then you're going to hire nonprofit these people for a halftime show.
Yeah.
That's supposed to change, like, what changed your life and what? No, give me the check. Give me the check. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, that is.
I think that's a great point, and I also think that this notion that it's like, you know, because they're all like, it's like this idea that it's a big deal, like, oh my God, the first ever all hip hop halftime show, right?
Yeah.
And it's this idea that it's like, you know, oh my goodness, like, we're all really nervous about what could happen, what could go wrong, what might they do on live TV. And it's like, the people that you were like the Aerosmiths of the world that were like allowed to do these shows, like, what do you think they do, but like in behind closed doors? Like they're talking about drugs and all these different things, but it's because they're white, you know what I mean? And like that they're commercially acceptable as non-controversial, right? Like, but there's plenty of stories of all these different types of artists, you know, getting caught up in all different kinds of things. I mean, even like somebody as squeaky clean as Bruno Mars has had like a cocaine, you know what I mean? Like controversy, like all these different things. Everybody has their own stuff, but for whatever reason, when it's like all now, because it's all black artists, everybody's on the edge of their seats, so nervous that this is happening at this time. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me that's the mindset.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the number one American sport that is problematic racially, I think you're just going to automatically get that.
Yeah,
you know, there's just no way around it. It's just, and I mean, I'm not saying there's no way around it. Like it's never ever going to change, but we just got to keep calling these people out, man. We just got to keep calling it out and calling it out as we see it. And, you know, I know social media has its own power, but I don't know, we need some action. we need something. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's like, I mean, let's be real, you know, white people, y'all love our music. Y'all love our flavor. Y'all love the sazon. You guys love the hit. Like we all get it. Okay.
Right.
We love to see it. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the streams. Thank you for whatever. But when it comes to something like a halftime show, or something to the players, I mean, that's just more. That's more showing what they really think and what they really feel. Right. So at some point, like if we want to see some drastic change, there has to be some drastic pushback. And I don't know if we're ever going to get there. I don't know if we're ever going to really like in our lifetime.
Sure.
But there just needs to be like a lot of changes. You know, we gotta just gotta support each other and like love each other. I'm like kumbaya, but like, but also really? Like we gotta show them like what our worth is. I mean, I was just talking to somebody. You know that Bad Bunny's like the number one artist streamed. Period. Like period. Not Latino. Not like to me. I'm like that's crazy.
Yeah.
That means everyone is supporting. Everyone is touching base on this. Every single person.
Sure.
And when you have that kind of power, I'm not talking about Bad Bunny, I love you, by the way. But when you have that kind of power, like when you have that power as a person of color, as an artist, like we have to use that power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what's the point of having it?
Right.
Just so you can sit in your millions of dollars and just like, what's the point? What's the point?
No, 110%. Like we have to be taking action, and you know, it's like somebody always told me, you throw the ladder back down for the next person, right? Like when you make it to that you know that achievement that you've been going for, you make sure you throw the ladder back down so somebody else can get up there as well, you know. And that's what we have to collectively do as a community. I mean, you know, Latinos have been notoriously terrible at organizing and making sure that our problems have been heard, and we also have. You know, an incredible amount of division even within our own community. You know, I touched on it a bit. You know, talking about the colorism and the dark history. You know, of the dark history of colorism in our community. You know, but those are all things that we need to grow past and push past and understand that like they no longer serve us. You know what I mean? Like these prehistorical ideas of what it means to be Latino and what, you know, the preferred like that's just dumb and really is only holding us back from you know actually having our voices really heard and from having real representation from real change, you know. Right.
But it goes back so much deeper to, you know, I mean, if there was 5 of us fighting for a job back in the day, one of us would get it, right? So then we're pinned against each other, and we're conditioned now in this way where it's like, oh, I don't have to be pinned against my sis or whatever. Like there was a gig I couldn't do, and like I was like, y'all want me to look up? I know 10 Afro-Latinas that could be sick in this role. Oh, really, Darilyn? Oh, yeah. I'm like, it's not rocket science. Right. It's not rocket science. I mean, you and I, you know, me being on your show, and now I'm about to hit you up to be on my show. Like, you know what I mean? This is how we got to show up for each other. And we got to like, even the music thing, like all of that, like, yo, sis, where's your next show? What's like, how can I support you? How can we support each other? How can we support each other?
Right. No, that's a fact, because I think we can't expect white people to collectively have this come to Jesus moment where all of a sudden they just like forget everything that they've been taught, you know, and it's like I interviewed the comedian Godfrey, and he put this in a way that I'll never forget. He said, you have white people will love to cheer on LeBron James when he's playing for their team, but would never want him dating their daughter. And that's kind of like
period.
Period. How to sum up the relationship that many white people have and how they would view Black people, you know, and in their minds, they're not racist for having that viewpoint. So therefore, if they don't believe there's an issue, there's never going to be an actual correction or path to correction, you know? So you're absolutely right. It's about us supporting one another. And when one of us gets in a position of power, make sure that we're doing it right. And that, you know, we're empowering each other, you know, that to kick down the door ourselves, essentially, right? That we're not waiting for somebody to open it up for us anymore. Yep.
And you don't have to be the only one in the room. Don't be, and then that's a problem on us that we have to check, right? And recorrect. It's like, because we were taught to survive, right? We were taught this fight mode. So it's like another Afro-Latina walks in the room, like, it's okay to be nice to that person.
Right.
It's okay to be like, oh, we're in this together. We're not supposed to be fighting against each other.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, your victory essentially could potentially start kicking down doors for other people. You know, that's the way I always looked at it. Like, if I'm out here winning and I'm successful, you don't think that's going to open the eyes to like these people that are in charge? Because at the end of the day, it's about money. Who are like, hey, this is making us money now. Why not do another Latin show with a Latin star type of thing? You know what I mean? Like, you don't think Encanto, the success that's having, is now going to open the doors for more diverse content from places like Disney down the line? You know what I mean? So like, that we can't have this scarcity mindset that somebody else's success takes away from ours. You know, like, it's all of us are in this together, and we all have our own space that we have a place to win at.
Absolutely. And I always tell the kid, I mentor some young children and some young adult actors or singers or whatnot. And I always say, I remember, like, there's times where people would do really good in the class or something, and then like the other kids would start to, like, insecurity started to kick in. And I'm like, root for your friends. I'm like, if your friends don't win, you don't win.
Right.
If your friends don't win, you don't win. Yeah. So what is this, like, or she was a little flat, like, help the girl. Sure. Like, for what? How does that help you? How does that help that person? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we just gotta be there for each other a little bit more.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I think, so let's kind of now touch on all that you do. I mean, we've kind of been, touching on, I feel like, a lot of what your podcast is kind of based upon, but let's talk about it. You've got the Modernita podcast on iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. Anybody that's not familiar with it yet, let us know kind of what the concept is behind it.
Yeah. So, what we're really doing on Modernita is the ultimate goal is to make sure that we have as many different Latinx people on the show that want to share their story. Sure. Now, we do highlight, I'm an Afro-Latina, hence Modernita. So, we love to talk about, like, just everything that we can across the border. But the ultimate goal is to share stories from our culture and from our people, to show that we are not a monolith. We are so many different, we come in different shades of brown. We come with different stories. Some of us come with a different kind of background. And some of us are, everybody on the show is kicking ass and taking names and doing their thing. And we're just really highlighting that. And what I love about my show is that
you're allowed to love your show.
Is that we have a range of, like, we had Amara La Negra for the first episode. Boom. Love it. Hit it hard. Yeah. But then we have, like, we have a director on Broadway or a playwright who just won an award and who's upcoming. So the one thing I love about my show is that we're not only, like, out here trying to, like, get the A-listers or whatever. Like, we're out here trying to talk to our people who are doing things right now in the community, in the streets. And I love hearing from people on social media. I get people writing me now all the time, like, hey, I love to share my story. And like, the person might have 700 followers, but I don't care. I'm like, let's have a Zoom meeting. I want to hear what you want to share on the show. And next week we set up an interview. Like, and that's what Modernita's about. It's about really taking our true community, not just like this other extra level that that we're on, but I want to make sure everybody's included, everybody's story is heard, and you will laugh, you will cry, you will be in the car. It's a good time. It's a great show. I'm learning so much from it as well. As this is the new lane for me. So,
right. That's what I was gonna ask you. How has podcasting been treating you? I mean, what's kind of been the learning curve a bit?
I mean, just like everybody, like, I'm I'm still like dealing with this like nervousness, this like fear sometimes, because you never know what's gonna happen. And you like, and I don't want to piss people off. I don't want to like, but I also want to be honest. And I'm trying to read the room. I'm trying to like learn in that. And also like getting feedback from people has been really awesome. I get people writing me, you know, as I said, on social media, and things like that, about the things that they love. And I love a little criticism, you know, I love a little bit of, you know, not ignorance though. Cause one time we had this comment one time that was like, the first episode, somebody was like, she's Black, she's not Latina. And I said, this is the reason why we're doing this show.
Right.
To educate you. To educate you, Mr. Jose 923. I'm just kidding. That wasn't his name. But I'm just saying, like, that literally, but that ignited a fire in me. Because I'm like, you're the reason why I'm doing this. You cannot fathom that you can be Black and Latino. Like, that's crazy. Please, I hope you listen more. Like, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, and that I love that it's lighting that fire for you, and you know you're gonna have plenty more of those haters as the show grows. You know, like I've gotten people who called me racist because I wanted to talk for be an advocate for my community. You know what I mean? Like, so you're just gonna get a lot of ignorant comments, and then like the anonymity that the Apple Podcast app gives you when people leave reviews and stuff like that. Like, it's just gonna invite all of that nonsense. You know. But yeah, I'm glad that, you know, you're developing a good mindset about it, because it does become a bit frustrating when you have people trying to tell you your story, essentially, right? Based off of like 30 minutes of them listening to one episode of your show or something like that. You know, probably not even 30 minutes of it. They probably didn't even give it that much. Yeah. Right. So, you know, and I guess that's just social media as a whole. But yeah, I love that you're kind of really just stepping into it, you know, so forcefully. And I love the concept of giving more people a platform, you know, because I think that was kind of the beauty of podcasting, you know, initially was like that. It really was for the people, was for anybody, you know, and I think that as it grows and becomes more of like a household thing that, like, you know, my mom listens to, you know, like now it loses a bit of that. And like, it's like the celebrities are the thing that people are trying to, you know, put a focus on when it comes to podcasting. And it loses a bit of that honesty, like conversation with your friend type of thing, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's been a good ride so far. I'm enjoying it.
I love it. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Anytime you want to come back, you let me know. It's great to actually get to meet you now. Anything that you want to plug for people to check out? Anything else that you're working on?
You guys can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Darilyn Melody. And my handle for Modernita Podcast is at Modernita Podcast. And I have a website, www.darilyncastillo.com. So you can find out my other projects, what shows I'm doing, what I'm filming, what music is coming out, things like that. So, you know, we got a lot of pots on the oven. That's what you got to do. You got to cook. You know, you got to cook a couple meals. You know. Yes, you gotta just keep cooking until something turns out, you know, edible. I guess at the end of the day. Listen, I'm all about. Listen, I love paychecks coming from every direction. So I'm like, we gotta keep. You gotta keep that artist, that hustle. I'm a New Yorker. I'm like that hustle mentality. I don't stop. Yep. So there's always something to check out. You got to collect that paycheck while you still can, because it could dry up very quickly. You never know. This pandemic, almost got us. Yes. Listen, it's been such a pleasure again to get to meet you, Darilyn. I'm sure we'll interact a bunch more after this. For sure. Thanks for having me. Of course. Man, big shout out to my family, Darilyn Castillo, for hopping on. Check out the Modernita podcast out everywhere right now, wherever you find podcasts. And before we get out of here, let's end, of course, with some positivity in the form of a positive quote. Now, as we close out Black History Month, I want to make sure that I read a quote from a Black history legend, a Latin Black history legend, an Afro-Latino, Roberto Clemente. And this quote is, anytime you have an opportunity to make a difference in this world and you don't, then you're wasting your time on Earth. And man, this is so incredibly powerful. And I like to think that this is kind of my unofficial mantra for my existence here on this earth. I think too many of us have been programmed by media and by society to be living selfishly for ourselves. I mean, hell, look at the talking heads that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. This man doesn't care about any of you. He's literally just trying to get himself the biggest check and the biggest ratings he possibly can.
And he is not trying to make a real difference. He's just trying to capitalize for his own personal gain. And to me, when I see that, I don't care how much money you have in the bank, how much more money than you have than me. You're wasting your time here on this earth. Your precious time here on this earth is chasing after things that don't actually matter. Your ego does not need to be supported in this way. The happiest and most fulfilled people in this world have figured out that true happiness and true fulfillment come from helping your fellow brother and sister. One person told me pretty recently that the point of all of this, the point of getting success and finding any sort of growth in your life is to always be able to throw the ladder back down. That is the point of it all. You want to be in a position where you can throw the ladder back down for the next person so they can bring themselves up. That's what's all important in this life. That's all that matters in this life. Helping each other out and working for the betterment of mankind. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into another episode. I appreciate you. Season 3, we are out here underway. I'll catch y'all next week with a brand new episode. Until then, stay safe. Talk to you soon. Bye.